Namaste, I am Vani Raju, Executive Director of Ganges Valley School. Welcome to Samvadh, a conversation with Ms. Aarti Rajratnam, a well-known psychologist, author and an innovative curriculum and educational consultant. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, parents, as educators, we have lot of dreams, lot of narratives which we form even before the child is born, and this brings about lot of expectations. The child is born with the burden of, living our expectations, fulfilling our dreams. How does this affect the relationship of the child and the parent?
Ma'am, as human beings, we are relational beings, meaning that we thrive in relationships. Having said that, we also have needs which we meet in a relationship, and that's where expectations are really born, because when I have needs and I'm in a relationship, I tend to meet many of these needs in a relationship. Now, when you ask me about how does this affect the parent-child relationship, if these expectations are realistic, then it becomes a very healthy kind of a relationship, because parents understand the child's needs, they're aware of their own needs, and they're able to work around the relationship. Where the problem arises, like you mentioned in your statement, child comes with these burdens of having to meet everybody's expectations. That comes when the expectations are very unrealistic. Now, if I could give you an example, let's say a parent who did not have too many experiences or too much of resources to access good education, always has this thing that the child has to study well, has to be in the best of schools, has to come first in class, these kind of expectations, but the child may be tuned for something else. Or a parent who could not take music classes, something as simple as that, would want the child to be a musician, whereas the child could be, say, a sports person or somebody who's tuned to science. So when this happens, when there is this mismatch between what the parent is expecting and what the child is capable of, that's when the relationship becomes negative in that sense. And when I say negative, what happens is there's a constant friction between the two of them. There is a rift that develops by the time the child is a teenager. And in the older ages, there's a lot of regret and remorse on both sides, because the parent is wondering, why did the child not speak to me? Why did not share with me? Why is he speaking to his teacher? Why is he speaking to other people, not coming to me? So these kind of dynamics play out when expectations are unrealistic and when the relationship falls apart as a result of that.
So why do you think as parents we have this expectations which we build up even before the child is born or after they're born? Why do you think we have this kind of expectations?
I think it's a natural human process. I mean, as human beings, trying to make sense of the world, needs do arise. So, for example, initially our needs are very physiological, it's just hunger, thirst related. But as we grow and we look at society, we sort of mingle with a couple of people, we start realizing that, I have this, they don't have it, or they have these things and I don't have this. So in that sense, what happens is the society also starts, putting this pressure on me, and those societal expectations also lead to many of my, these expectations that come in. So shaping of expectations happen very subtly. It's not a very conscious process. It's not like I engage with the world and say, okay, this is what I want. It's a very subtle thing. Many times if you notice that, I'm feeling a little bit of discomfort in me, and when I actually sit down and examine it, it's because somebody said something or someone compared me to somebody else. These kind of very gentle things that happened outside, very subtle, not obvious things, those shape my expectations. And then what happens is, because I don't know how to consciously meet these, I start doing it through the one who's weaker than me, usually my child. So this mismatch again is one of the reasons why all of this falls, or rather goes out of hand and doesn't fall in place. On the other hand, when I'm very conscious, when I'm aware that, this is what I'm expecting, and this is something that I need to meet on my own and not, sort of pressurize my child or somebody else in my environment to meet for me, then it becomes a very healthy, robust ecosystem within which my child can flourish.
See, I have been in these shoes. Like I always wanted to learn piano, and I didn't learn. So I have put my children, both of them, in piano classes. I guess they did it for my sake. You know, my older one did it up to a certain, almost till the last level of piano. The younger one, you know, only at a certain level, and I realized that she's not interested in it. So I was projecting my dreams onto my child to fulfill these. So where does this again lead to? How do we, you know, control our own desires to be projected on to the child?
Again, ma'am, this would be at the level of awareness. Now, as a parent, you become aware that, you know, what you did wasn't particularly fair to the children. It was your own need that you were projecting. But many parents are unaware of the fact that they could be projecting their own expectations or needs, and sometimes their insufficiencies into the child. And this also leads to a lot of anger. If you notice, many parental parent-child relationships, when there is a lot of rebellion and things like that, you'll notice that it's because the parent has some unaddressed need, and then they're pushing it onto the child as an expectation, and the child is rebelling this unnatural or you know, sometimes very difficult set of expectations from the parent. So in that sense, how do we prevent projection? Again, it starts with an awareness of needs, and for this every parent needs to realize that parenting is not about just meeting, you know, the basic needs of I'll feed you on time, I'll send you to the best schools, I'll do all of this. I also need to become aware of what you really need, what it is that I can do for you as a parent, and what it is you can do on your own. Enabling those choices is a very important aspect of these expectations, because expectations in themselves are not to be demonized or put in a negative box saying, you know, you should never have expectations. If we do not have expectations, we will never reach out to another human being. We will actually be able to live very well in solitude and isolation. These expectations enrich the quality of our interactions when they are led with awareness. So in that sense, like you beautifully said, you projected your needs onto the child. Some people may even displace their needs. So for example, they don't know how to deal with a negative desire. Okay, they're positive experiences, and there are also negative things, like for example, I don't want to do something, I don't want to fail. So in that sense, I may be pressurizing my child to do so much more. So I may, you know, try to insulate them from everything. We call them the snowplow parents in some sense, you know, where we remove all the obstacles from their path and don't let them thrive. So it can be a combination of many of these things. So again, I probably sound very repetitive in that sense, but unless I'm aware of my needs, my relational dynamics, whether it's a parent-child relationship, an intimate partner relationship, or even at work, may always have these conflicts that I'm not able to resolve.
So tell me, ma'am, there is something called expectations versus reality. Like there is a saying that you can't have the same task for two different people. For example, you know, a monkey can climb the tree. You can't ask the fish to have the same task to do it. Obviously, one of them is going to excel, the other is going to fail. Parents come from a very, very good intention. They want the best for their child. They want them to excel. Ultimate goal is to be happy. But all this is coming from somewhere future and past, and expectations coming from a fear or a lack, right? So how do we as parents deal with this and recognize what the reality is, what the child wants, what the child can do, what the child is capable of, and not get bogged down by the society, compare with others, and, you know, be in equanimity with what the child can do?
Such a beautiful question, because it can't be quickly answered as, you know, these are the set of tips and tricks that we have. We'll need to realize that the child is being raised in an ecosystem, and whether we like it or not, the influence of the ecosystem will impact us in some way. As long as we don't make it a negative impact, or don't allow it to impact us negatively, I don't think we should worry too much. Meaning that I will be in a city where everybody is competitive and wants to take a competitive exam, and I will see parents of my children's classmates who probably are over teaching the child, sending them for 50 million classes and doing these competitive tests and things like that. I may see, even as an infant, the child being taught countries and capitals and things like that. I may be exposed to a lot of these things. I need to look at all of this very objectively and say, great, these are things that people find useful for their children, and leave it at that level and come back to my personal relationship with my child, and then understand that my child is completely unique and it's not even going to have many of the traits that I have. That's the first realization, because many times we just assume that they're like a mini version of me and that they're going to have the same interests and things like that. So to understand right there that my child is going to be extremely different from me, that's the first realization. The second is that teaching can happen only when there is a secure relationship. So my first and my most important goal is to build that secure relationship, which we call in psychology the attuned relationship. Attunement is where I'm aware of my child's needs. So if I were to start with the simplest example of attunement, when the baby cries, the cry is different when they are hungry, when they are in pain, when they are looking for play, when they want to bond with the mother or somebody, when they don't like a stranger, when they don't want to be in a situation, when something is too overwhelming. So if the mother and the father become aware of the cry and meet that in the most appropriate way. So when the child is hungry, give them a feed. Don't wait for them to cry it out. There are certain schools of thought that say, let the child cry it out. That's invalidation. So when I become aware of my child's need and meet it in the most appropriate way, it builds the trusting relationship upon which I can base my observations and understanding. The second step that I would take as the child is growing is to join them in activities that they enjoy. And children know very early how good they are at something. And if I were to quote an example, my nephew was about 3 years old when he went to school, and he was given a questionnaire where they asked him, who is your role model? And I was probably a little shocked, because the school is asking a 3-year-old who his role model is. But he came and asked me, what is a role model? And I told him, they want to know, who do you want to become like? Child looked very puzzled, and he said, why should I become like anybody else when I can be me? And that is the wisdom that every child has. We somehow dumb that down. We sort of destroy it. See, for the first 2 years of the child's life, we teach them how to walk and how to talk and all of that. And then after that, we actually ask them to sit down and shut up. We don't allow them to express their needs or even become aware of their needs. So in that sense, attunement is the first step, and understanding that the child has an innate wisdom that if I play along with that and if I sort of join them with in that journey, I may become aware of what they're innately capable of. And there may be interests and thoughts, needs that will be very different from what I can do or who I am. Then encouraging them for short periods of time so that they enjoy what they're doing, and then when they want to quit or they don't want to be part of something, to try and understand why they want to do that. Sometimes it could be overwhelmed, sometimes it could be a lot of fear, sometimes it's just boredom. So when I start understanding this and playing along, the expectation level from my side sort of becomes something that is very in tune with the child's capability and the child's own awareness of his or her own needs. And this sets the tone for the beauty in the relationship, because it becomes something beyond just doing. It becomes that relationship that's rooted in being. And I think that's where we can sort of blend our expectations, the expectations of society and the needs of the child into one beautiful ecosystem.
Wonderful, ma'am. I think children are born very intuitive, their own sovereign beings, and somewhere along the line, as parents, we tend to, burden them with expectations without realizing the reality of it. And you've beautifully explained how to be attuned to, child's own needs, feelings, and not project our own expectations and fears onto them. Thank you so much, ma'am.